Well, President-elect Trump is getting ready for tonight's rally in Wisconsin. You'll see it here live when he begins to speak. In the meantime, socialism is alive and well in the United States and getting more popular, according to polls. One group of socialist students are organizing a walkout on Election Day. The organizers, who call themselves Socialist Alternative, say this will send a message to President Trump. Joining us now is Elon Ackelbank. He's a junior at Northeastern University and is on the Socialist Students Organizing Committee. Elon, thanks a lot for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me, Tucker.
So the question, if you're a socialist, and by the way, I take your views seriously. I don't agree with them, but I don't think a lot of people agree with you. If you are a socialist and you care about working people, but you also hate Trump, how do you square the fact that the majority of private sector union members, the very people you exist to help and stand up for, voted for Trump?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the reality is a lot of people had to vote for Trump for him to get elected, and I don't question that. He's now the president of the United States of America, and we have to deal with that. But from our perspective in socialist students, we're calling for a national day of student walkouts on January 20th, on Inauguration Day, in order to send the strongest possible message, starting on day one, that we reject his agenda of, attacks on women and not letting women, have the right to choose what to do with their body. His agenda of deporting millions of hard, working class immigrants, working people like you're talking about. His agenda of forcing Muslims, millions of peaceful, genuine Muslims to register in this registry
Right.
so that the government can monitor him. And we reject his corporate agenda, which will actually hurt a lot of working class people and really the whole 99% as a whole. So what we're doing is calling for students to walk out of classes and join protests in their cities on January 20th to send that message and build, step one in the process of building a movement to resist Trump.
But I'm confused about the message. So if you're a socialist, you're primarily interested in changing our economic policy, and I read your website and you say that your young people who see the crisis of student debt, our declining living standards are entirely based on capitalism. It's a system that exploits the many for the benefit of a few. I get it. But again, back to my first question, a lot of people voted for Trump, but they were largely, overwhelmingly working class people, the very people you say you're here to represent and help. Have you thought at all about why that is?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, the dominant feature of this whole election, not just the general election, but going back, I mean, this election has been longer than I think a lot of us would have preferred it to be, about a year and a half. I think the dominant feature of this was a mood, an anti-establishment mood. People are upset with the way things are going, including myself, and certainly a lot of, working people, young people and students. And so I think people were looking for a change, and a lot of people voted for Trump because they thought, he was saying he was going to drain the swamp, change the system. He's talking about Washington insiders, right? He's talking about, the political establishment. And these are a lot of things that I agree with. I do think there's Washington insiders. But from my point of view, what we need is anti-corporate candidates, anti-racist candidates, anti-sexist candidates. They put forward not a message of division, but a message of unity based on the 99% opposing our common enemy, which, we in social students see as the 1%.
But wait a second. Who did the 1% support in this election? Who did every CEO, the entire tech community, all of finance, all of them were against Trump? And by the way, who's in favor of the mass immigration that you claim to support? It's businesses, because they want cheaper labor. They don't want immigrants to come in to make America more diverse. They want them to come in and work for cheap wages. Do you see the connection at all, and why you're abetting that?
Certainly a lot of corporate CEOs and whatnot endorsed Hillary, and this is because Hillary was a Wall Street friendly candidate. But that's actually not true what you're saying. I mean, if you look at Trump's appointments on the past 2 days, he just appointed the CEO of ExxonMobil, one of the most major gas companies in the country and actually the world too. That he just appointed him as Secretary of State. The CEO of Goldman Sachs is now on his cabinet. So what you're saying isn't totally true.
No, but here's what is true.
No, not really.
He has appointed a bunch of corporate people, for sure. But on the question of immigration, mass low-skilled, low-wage immigration, business is for that. You're for it, too. Why do you think they're for it? Because they want to see a more complicated tapestry? No. Because their labor costs decline when they import low-skilled people who will work for less, whom they can exploit.
Right. And that's why one of the key things that socialist students calls for is a $15 an hour minimum wage for all workers, because anybody who works, anybody who contributes to society deserves to have a living wage. So I don't accept this argument that if workers come from another country, that should allow corporations to drive down wages. The reality is that every single person who works, whether you're a student or a working person with a family, that you should have a living wage.
Okay, that's fine, and no one disagrees with that, but there is massive unemployment in the middle of the country, massive, and a higher rate for men than during the Great Depression. If you bring in more workers, will there be more or less employment? There will be less employment, more people competing for fewer jobs. This is basic economics. How can you as a socialist be for that?
What we need is jobs programs, and the reality is that appointing a CEO. The reality is that appointing a CEO of Goldman Sachs as our finance advisor, somebody who rejects the concept of the minimum wage.
Look, I'm taking you seriously, and you're just repeating dumb liberal talking points. Be a socialist. Be a radical. Open your mind. I'm serious. You're not a socialist. You're a lifestyle liberal who's upset about the same boring rich people topics. Look at the economics of it. And you know what I mean? You may
I'm looking at the economics. I feel like you're trying to get us distracted. The key message is that young people, the majority of high schoolers couldn't even vote for Donald Trump because they weren't old enough. But Donald Trump's policies of deporting immigrants, making Muslims register, attacking women's rights, these things are going to affect high schoolers.
Those are just
young
talking
people.
Points. You know what? The one thing about socialists is they're kind of interesting. Elon, open your mind. We're out of time, unfortunately. I'm being told we got to stop. But I appreciate your coming on. Thank you.